just received the first copy of my book. Obviously it didn't come with those orange tags on it. I put them in for this little film. I guess you call it video. My generation calls it a film. Which shows some of the pages that have illustrations on, mostly because nobody wants to look at a video of print. So I've selected out some pages, left out a whole bunch of chapters, but it's a good sampling of it. So this is the cover, obviously, and it's centered. I'm now going to move it, open it, and the front end papers here, end papers, were done with 3D printing by my son Tony, and it's basically a UU, which is what I'm using sort of as a logo for the book, UU. Goes right into the book. This is important because this list is all the people who helped me by writing chapters, doing interviews, me talking to them on the phone, providing some photographs, doing things. That's the list. And Jack Dangerman over there is my angel who helped me get this thing done, who wrote a chapter in the book, who helped me with this last part of my life doing the Urban Observatory, which will show up. So I'm now just going to turn pages. This first part is a teaser. It's on my website, uursw.com, and it's a teaser because it's an illustrative table of contents, and it's to suck you in and seduce you into looking at the rest of the book. This is good to read. People probably won't read it, but the last sentence here, that's the whole introduction. That's one of the shortest introductions I think I've ever done for any book. And the last sentence here is that this whole book is dedicated to the dessert of this book is conversation. And it's how to have conversation with a page of a book, with print, which is what I've been trying to do in my last 4 or 5 or 10 or 15 books, is to have a conversation with the printed page. I'm skipping here to a chapter on one of my heroes who's younger than I am, but certainly cleverer, smarter, and edgier, and that's Stefan Sagmeister. And in this chapter, I show an amazing collection. Oh, I skipped. An amazing collection of CVs that he did, of speakers at one of the TED conferences, 69 or 70 of them, of amazing people. Everybody, they were huge, they're huge posters, where he wrote over the faces edgy, funny things about each person. And they really are a good CV. It's really, you want to know the people. And it's just some wonderful, wonderful people. There they go. Okay. Likewise, this man who gave me was the original person who was enthusiastic about me doing the book, took all the photographs for the best conference I ever did, which was the WWW conference. And this is John Kamen, who owns Radical Media. And these are some of the photos, a selection of photos of people who spoke there. There's E.O. Wilson and Craig Venter. There's Yo-Yo Ma. There's will.i.am. There's the great Kevin Kelly, my son, etc. We all know Mark Cuban. And that's Jack Dangerman himself, which is where the conference was held, was at his private auditorium. This is the opening with Yo-Yo playing. And that's a Reja screen from Spain in the Mission Hotel. Okay. There's a whole chapter on my mentor, who I still think of every day. This is probably his greatest building, I think his greatest building. Maybe it just beats out Kimball. And this is the capital of Bangladesh, in Dhaka, and a gorgeous picture of the insides of that building. This is a chapter, the end of a chapter on Walt Mossberg, who made things understandable for all of us, for all of the non-geeks in this world. And this is one of the greatest conversations and interviews that ever took place with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, Karen Swisher, his partner, in doing the D conference. And I was lucky enough to be there for that wonderful, wonderful moment. I worked for Charlie Eames and for Lou Kahn, the only two people who didn't fire me. And this is the best timeline I've ever seen. And this is the timeline. I think it was better than the show that the timeline was based on. And it was on the lives of Franklin and Jefferson. It's a brilliant timeline and a way of making both of their lives interwork and mingle and be braided like the braids that they have found in the rings around Saturn. It's just amazing what lined up and what didn't line up. Density of information, likewise on Nathaniel Pearlstein, which some of you have not heard, who takes dense governmental, federal government information, the Supreme Court, the House of Representatives, various things, and the presidents, and makes them understandable in how they relate to each other in very dense pages of graphics. My best-selling book, which I sold more than 3 million copies of, was Making the Olympics Understandable in 1984, where I loved the Olympics but couldn't understand and didn't know how archery was scored. I didn't know anything about bicycles. This has all changed since '84. I'm sure the bike stuff has. That probably hasn't. But the people on television, the reporters, they don't tell you how anything works or how anything is scored. You can't figure it out unless, and they hardly ever show it. They're much more interested in showing the up close and personal of some defector from some country's aunt who came to the conference and is now happy to be away from home. I did a strange book with Lynch, and well, he took this picture. He took several pictures of the book. This is the cherry pie that you could get at the counter shop, and this was a joke. The whole book was a takeoff and making a joke of Twin Peaks, and at the same time making a joke of my access guides, which were very popular then. So it's an access guide there it is, access. It's an access guide to an imaginary place. And he took that photo of the cabs. And the book is rather funny. It was translated into many languages. In the middle of it, I was invited to Japan because I was doing a conference there. I thought I was fairly well known, and all they wanted to do was talk to me about the Twin Peaks book because it was translated into Japanese, and that was much more important than anything I had ever done. I have an amazing section on another hero of mine because I don't understand how he operates and how he gets it done and how it works. Spencer Tunick, the photographer who photographs nudes. And then when you say photographs, nudes, and thousands of nudes, there's 18,000, or no, that's less. That's in Sydney by the Opera House, and this is inside the Opera House, I think. But there's one shot I have of 18,000 people in front of the Zocalo, the Grand Cathedral in Mexico City. He was invited there. He's invited by these cities, so he's not going there to put 18,000 nude people there and be arrested. The city invites him there because it's very special for the city to be included. And there's a documentary on him that probably is more interesting than what you see here, of watching him work in this sort of very laid-back, semi-sleepy way and getting thousands of people to do his bidding of extremely well-planned out exercise of photography. There's some more. There's Penn Station. There's everybody's butts. It's hilarious. The planning that goes into this. This is a husband and wife team. Well, let me get the first page of this chapter. And he's the photographer, she does all the research. They equally share in all of this. And he's done a series of books where he shows, well, this one is my favorite. It's what people eat in a week, and they put everything out that they eat in a week in the original packaging, in their kitchen, in their clothes. And if you realize, well, this one is, I forget which one, so I'll look it up. This is in Australia. There's no way of showing that comparably. Packaging, clothing, a kind of glance at health, a glance at economics, next to a whole series of places around the world. It's brilliant. Basically, without a word, it tells you a story. And if you wrote the story, you wouldn't understand as much as looking at the photograph. I thank them for letting me use these. They're quite amazing. Look at that. It's all so different, and we all come out as people. I mean, it's like you have a toothpaste tube, and every time you squirt it, it's the same, even though the ingredients in the other end are different. Well, here's one of the great masters. I have earlier in the book, I have a chapter on Kahn, and this is Milton Glaser. And he's let me use a conversation with one of our jointly favorite artists, Piero della Francesca. This is the original little Piero della Francesca down here. And he has a conversation with it, with these amazing paintings in watercolors for him to understand, and for, of course, us to understand the essence of Piero better. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book. Everybody knows David Macaulay, How Things Work. And a book that is one of my favorites of him, because it's not only a book of how things work and how things are made, but it's a book about opposites. It's the unbuilding of the Empire State Building. Not the building of it, the unbuilding of it. And he's let me use his notebooks to show you how he thinks out the process of unbuilding it. This is, of course, when it's finally built, but this shows how he develops it from the top, pulling the top down and eventually getting to the bottom. The storyline is that some wealthy sheik in Saudi Arabia wants the Empire State Building, so they have to unbuild it and ship off the parts to Saudi Arabia and then build it again in Saudi Arabia. A hilarious notion that he thought of. This is part of a book I did called Understanding USA. If you notice in the word USA are in the word understanding in the right order. I thought I was terribly clever about that, but most people just call the book Understanding. They don't see Understanding USA in it. This was a great map that was done by Don Moyer. He used to work for me, worked for years out of Pittsburgh, and it's been copied without credit by the New York Times and a whole bunch of other people, because it's a brilliant way to show the population of the United States, which also shows you a marketing plan of the United States, where people live, the politics of the United States, a whole bunch of stuff. It's a really wonderful map. The book, Understanding USA, the idea was to do an annual report of America. This is a book, this is a project I did called Paperclip and 299 Other Things. And it was my dabbling into American-made, American-designed products over a couple hundred years. Frank is a good friend of mine. And so I begged him to send me some photographs of a half a dozen models he had in his office. And when I say begged, I called him over and over and over again, which is what I do. And he finally gave in, or at least he appointed somebody to give in, and sent me a deck of 4,460 or 70, 4,460 photographs of 1,000 models. 1,000 models photographed in the cardinal position and from above, etc. A whole bunch of models of the building that finally got built in New York. That's a particularly good photo. In situ, and all kinds of other models. That's a good page too, showing basically the 6 models that I first saw that he showed me then. 900 and some versions of these. All ways of understanding, because he uses models to understand, to create, as opposed to sketches, drawings, and yellow, charcoal and yellow paper that Kahn used. Everybody uses something different. Eisenman uses a straight edge and ink, and his buildings look, people's buildings look like the media they use. David Blaine, who has been to a number of my meetings, TED Med meetings that I created at TED Conference, I find he is so unusual because his job is doing the opposite of what I do. He tries to make things not understandable, because that's what magic is. It's surprise and saying, how did he do that? I don't understand. How could he do that? So I have him in as a token, non-understandable person. Also, he's charming. I did a book called Information Architects. I have this in there. This is self-aggrandizement, because that's a map I did of Tokyo over the Yamanote line in my Tokyo Access Guide, but I also put it in this Information Architects book, which is a collection of wonderful people. Nigel Holmes. This is somebody who used to work for me in Philadelphia. Joel Katz. Oh, there's too many people here to tell you, but different people who helped me over the years and did different things. This is a book that never got off the ground. Did it, and then there was a change of, and it was funded, but it was not invented here, and they had a new executive director at the Museum of Modern Art, and they always have a policy of taking over things, anybody coming into a new company. So this whole project, which was finished, paid for, was trashed. This is a page that demonstrates a new calendar that I developed for a book called 33, and of course, the basis of the calendar was a 33-day month. Well, this is one of the great souks in I think this is the Egyptian souk. The better souks are in, I think, in Fez and Marrakesh. And it's a place you get lost in, and this is a diagram by John Grimwade. Oh, it's a prize to have this in here because this person is obsessively private. This is one of the Benson brothers from Newport, who was head of the School of Art and Design, I guess that's what it's called, at Yale. He's the man who prints he's a great photographer. He prints photography for the Library of Congress. He prints all the great photographs we see of the Civil War that Brady took. And his passion is to do things that only matter to him. And his house he takes out floors, he cuts holes in ceilings in a little teeny house in Newport. And he builds things. This is his exploration of what a clock is, the essence of clock. You can't tell time on it, but it's the essence of clock. Rather weird, but wonderful. Builds all the parts, puts them all together, and let me have it for this book. And I don't think anybody else will. Well, he was leading the team of Watson. We've all seen what IBM Watson does. And he talks about the limits of understanding artificially and non-artificially in this interview I did with him. His name is Ferrucci, sorry. Didn't give you his name. Nigel Holmes has been my right hand and left hand in a whole bunch of projects. And these are things he's done mostly for himself. Not this first one, but the rest of them. He does sometimes for himself little teeny projects of miniature books. These are actual size, or just about actual size. And then he did this for Rick Smolin on water. He's an amazing graphic designer who calls himself an explanation graphic designer. He explains things, which he does beautifully. I ran the International Design Conference in Aspen once, and I got 13 of the great graphic designers in America, who are all either on the Aspen board or came there, to make a poster each of making something understandable. And so I gave them the subjects. These were great posters, and this is just some of them. Well, we could just stop here. We could have started here and stopped here and just talked about the Gutenberg Bible. So many things dance around the Gutenberg Bible. This is a page of the Gutenberg Bible. Obviously, it's about 180 of them printed, beautifully set. There's a page here that shows, depending on who you are, the 200, the 500, the 60, the 700, the different letters of combinations that make it so it's perfectly set. He died penniless. This was not, as it's touted when you go to grammar school, the beginning of mass communications and literacy. No, they printed a couple hundred and they were very expensive, didn't have any effect on anything. What had an effect was the enemy of the church, Martin Luther, who because of this started printing pamphlets in German. They put up in 1517, I think, on the door of a church. And then he realized they could print them. He became the first best-selling author by using the technology of Gutenberg. Sold millions of copies of his pamphlets, and so did others, and spread religion. Well, this is wonderful. This is a happiness page in the book. Alan Hassenfeld, who I guess is the chairman or chairman emeritus or major owner of Hasbro, who owns Monopoly. I looked at Monopoly and I realized my history with Monopoly and then the history of all my friends, that when we're 10 years old, that's a good round number, we start playing Monopoly and we learn for the first time social skills, money, law, negotiations, real estate, cities, alliances, competition, cartography, trade, strategy, mathematics, power, greed, and a whole bunch of other things from playing what seems like an innocent game, which brings a delightful part of competition and evil into our lives. And so I have a chapter on that, and we have some of the old pieces. They've just replaced a couple pieces. And sets, people who come from the United States think, well, the Monopoly set is Atlantic City. But if you come from the United Kingdom, there's one with properties in England and London, and this is from some other place. There's about 70 of them. Here's Morocco. So I have a bunch of Monopoly boards with different places, and every place thinks theirs is the original one. Okay, we're getting at the end of this story. There's Jack. Couldn't have done the book without Jack. Jack owns Esri, does software. He's below the radar, as am I. Probably what makes us friends. And he does, I think, more software for informational mapping than anybody else in the world. GIS mapping. He owns Landsat. And he has a whole chapter on GIS mapping. We together, this is his chapter on the story of GIS. And the last chapter of the book is a project we did together, which was the Urban Observatory, which now has those cities in it, and we hope to have 500 or 1,000 cities which you can comparatively bring up 3 at any time. Look at them, they're all the same scale, information collected in a similar way. You make the scale small in one, the others become small, or a larger scale, I guess. Map smaller, the scale bigger. And there's about 20 different layers of information you can put on and compare. The back end paper is by my son, and the back cover, I think that's centered or just about, is of one of the most special places in my whole life, which is Piazza San Marco, which we celebrate because nobody put anything in it. It's surrounded by buildings that I don't know who the architect was. And it's a plaza that is nothing, that is empty. It's how we come into the world and how we come into the thinking about any idea. We start from zero and add to it to start creating understanding. Hope this was interesting.